I think you probably all know the name of this effort, so I'm not going to ask you to say it before I say it, Technology Cybersecurity Policy. But now that I've said it, it's Technology Cybersecurity Policy. So our speaker today is Ben Edelen. He is the Chief Information Security Officer of Boulder. Now, that's intriguing for me because when I think of cities, I really don't think of information officers. I don't think of smart cities. I have a 1984 car that destroys carbon, whatever it does. It does all kinds of bad things. And so I am 20 years, 30 years, 40 years behind. But the idea that there would be a smart city, the idea that it would be connected, the idea that there are people like Ben who worry about people, the infrastructure, the cybersecurity, the technology, the rollout, etc., for me it's unbelievably fascinating. And there is a planted question in the audience, which there are 3 students have to ask. If they don't ask, they will, well, it's going to be complicated. And so, please welcome our speaker, Ben Edelen. He's going to tell us about people first and cybersecurity. Please welcome. So thank you all.
Thanks, I really appreciate it. This is meant to be a little bit of a practical, so I'm definitely going to ask for some participation, and I'll get to that part in a little bit. So this is a conversation about people first cybersecurity. That's a term that I coined to describe the most important principle of the cybersecurity program that I run at the City of Boulder. So I am the Chief Information Security Officer at the City of Boulder. I am one of only a handful of security titled employees within that organization. The City of Boulder has about 1,400 employees. Those employees are spread across 18 different departments, and each of those departments is in a very, very different kind of business. So in many situations in the world, if you work for an organization, they're in a kind of business. The City of Boulder is in at least 18 different kinds of businesses, which creates a significant challenge to coordinate cybersecurity across that organization. And my role is to run the security program for that organization. And it's a technology security program that coordinates the efforts, the resources, the planning, the incident response, the policy, the education, and the overall strategy for cybersecurity across all of those 18 departments for the purpose of protecting the city in perpetuity against these emerging risks, up to and including the potential for cyber warfare. I am personally on a journey to figure out what is the underlying nature of leadership, because I need to provide the City of Boulder something that is a little bit hard to define in order to move us through this extremely dangerous landscape. So I'm on this journey, and right now where I'm at in the journey, my understanding of the roots at the bottom of leadership are that leadership is rooted in service, and this is all background around the practical that I'm going to do, and you'll see my process and you'll maybe understand me a little bit better and why I'm bringing these things up by the time I get to the end. I really think that for the most part, unless your organization is very advanced, your approach to cybersecurity should always be about getting the basics right. Everybody is excited to implement AI. Everybody is excited to implement cryptocurrency. Everyone is excited to implement quantum scale computing. But real cybersecurity happens when you just get the settings right on the computers, and sometimes that's a multi-year effort to convince an organization to just get the settings right. It seems easy, you just tell people what to do, but then they don't do what you want. So it's a serious problem, and we got to work through that. I do hold a bunch of security certifications. You can go find me on LinkedIn if you're excited about that. The most important thing to me is that if I have anything to say that's worth saying, that I tell it in a way that lands with you. So I would like a little bit of participation with you, and I hope that you like my stories, because I'm just pretty much going to tell stories about what I do. I'm going to dress it up a little bit. I never let the truth get in the way of a good story, so don't take anything I say as an indictment of the City of Boulder or its process. And by the way, it's very important that I say, I don't represent the City of Boulder in this context. All I am here today to do is to share some of the insights about my journey, what it is to be a Chief Information Security Officer, my hope that there is a future where people undertake cybersecurity leadership in addition to engineering, in addition to being analysts, being serious about compliance. Real leadership and people figuring out for themselves what that means and bringing it to an organization. So the things that I say today, I'm not saying as a representative of the City of Boulder. I think it's important to say that. This essentially will be me casting a spell. This is a spell that I cast on a very regular basis to take my organization's attention, or some subset of my organization's attention, and focus it on something that we need to work on, that I have pre-vetted. So I'll talk about the kind of spell that I'm going to cast, but the purpose of the spell is to protect my people and my organization. It has no other motivation behind it. So I do not use my tools for any purpose other than to keep people safe, first and foremost, and then to keep my organization safe. And the reason I say focused on people is because we have a people problem in cybersecurity. And in fact, cybersecurity is not a technology problem. It is rooted in the human experience. It's rooted in what it means to be a person and how we respond to failure compared to how we respond with so many other problems we have in life. There was someone I was talking to before class, and I mentioned that if you have a toothache, you go to the dentist. There's a person in our community whose job is to help you with that kind of a problem. You don't feel ashamed that you have a toothache. There's no shame component. People get toothaches. But if you have a cybersecurity problem, who do you go to? Who's your go-to person? Are you going to call the Geek Squad? You could. The Geek Squad might defraud you worse than the people that you're dealing with in the first place. So you have a serious problem. We live in a world where there isn't anything for ordinary people to do to protect themselves. And not only do ordinary people not have anything to do, the cybersecurity industry treats people very poorly. And they use this kind of terminology about humans and about the human element of cybersecurity. So over the course of 2 days, I thought I would look through my LinkedIn and see if I could come up with some evidence for this supposition. This was 2 days of toxic garbage that came across my LinkedIn feed about how stupid, how weak, how vulnerable, how shameful people are in their interaction with technology. And I want to draw your attention to something that had a huge impact on me. Down here in the lower right corner, my mouse is not going to show up, so I'm going to point on the screen. Problem exists between keyboard and chair. Replace user and then click OK. Now look at this person. Graham Westbrook, Director of Intelligence and Content at who knows where. Human error is almost always a reflection of bad design. What an awesome comment. Human error is almost always a reflection of bad design. If we baked cybersecurity into the tools that we were producing over the last 20 years, would the human cost of cybersecurity be happening right now? I don't believe that it would, but we wanted to get our products to market quickly. And if problems happen in the cybersecurity space with people, it's the people's own fault. That's the tack that our industry takes. So I propose, we are essentially ignoring, as an industry, this human cost. We're choosing to protect technology, we're choosing to protect money, we're choosing to protect borders, we're choosing to protect our reputation, and we're abdicating the challenge of protecting people. My program at the City of Boulder is a specific counter-argument to this problem. My program seeks explicitly and firstly to protect people, and then I protect technology and money and reputation. I try every day to play a game where no one is left behind, where everyone in my organization knows who to call, just like if they had a dental problem. And who to call in my organization is the IT service desk, who I have specifically trained to never shame people when they call, to treat people with the respect that they deserve when they're willing to acknowledge that they made a mistake and that they need help to recover gracefully, and to deliver that help so that our organization can survive the inevitable problems that crop up when people interface with technology, rather than just shifting the responsibility to them and shuffling them out of the organization, or whatever it is that I guess other organizations do in the face of mistakes and problems. And I think that that's an effective program.
So, question?
Yes.
Why has this adversarial relationship between the tech folk and the people folk, why has that emerged over time? I mean, because that seems to be the subtext of what you're sort of asking or stating.
I don't know that it's emerged over time. I think it's a default setting that many human beings take. I believe that it takes something to snap a professional, a practitioner out of a certain kind of cynical funk that they get into in the workplace. So for me, that happened in 2013. We had those floods. The city of Longmont was cut in half, and I got a call in the middle of the night saying, the Longmont Office of Emergency Management's website is down, and this website is literally telling people how to get home safely through this flood water ravaged town. And I don't want to get too deep into exactly how I extracted their website, but I extracted their website from the hosting provider which had taken it down intentionally, and I brought it up in our environment. And later, I heard back from their emergency management people, from their web management people, that they really believed that human beings did not die as a result of the website being brought back up. If that's true, then it's my obligation to deliver that kind of quality to the community. I can't know that now and go forward doing business as usual, where I leave people on the outside. Another great example of that is donating blood. If everyone in this room was really present with the amount of lives that are saved when you donate blood, you would all donate blood every 2 months because it's extremely valuable to our society. Because people are literally alive when you do donate blood, and they literally die when you don't. And it's a fascinating thing. We kind of we're effective at blinding ourselves to some of these more challenging truths about our world to give ourselves a pass so that we can just do business as usual. And I'm not saying that you guys are all cynical and you're not donating blood, what is wrong with you? My point is just that this is a journey, and you may come, if you get a sense of what I'm talking about, to find a passion in your own space for this kind of work, because I think this is a calling. Cybersecurity is a calling, and I am making a call that you may choose to respond to in your life. So I have a scenario here. This is my spell that I'm going to cast. The scenario is this, and I don't have a timer, so I'm going to blow this. Is there a timer around here that's effective? I'm going to pull my phone out. That will work. One of the things that works very, very well in my organization is if we sit down and do work together. So this is a co-work effort between you and me, where we're going to cast a spell to make a difference in an hour for a hypothetical organization called Baltimore, Maryland. And I am not talking about Baltimore, so I don't know anything about their situation. But I am going to use them as an example. The year is 2016, several years before Baltimore experienced their highly damaging cryptoware attack, which hopefully you folks are familiar with. Everyone's familiar with Baltimore's situation? Okay. I did actually see a lot of hands. So for reals, why don't you guys raise your hands so I can see if you're still alive? There are only 4 living people in this class. There are not going to be enough AEDs for all of you. So we definitely need slightly more participation as we go through this. You get some information about an emerging threat called Eternal Blue. Do you folks know what Eternal Blue is? Who could tell me what Eternal Blue is?
A Samba vulnerability developed by the NSA that was released by the shadow brokers.
Excellent. So Eternal Blue is fundamentally a weakness in the SMB version 1 protocol developed in, I'm going to throw this out, it's not very nice, partnership between Microsoft and the NSA, intentionally developed between Microsoft and the NSA, and accidentally leaked to the world through a data breach. A tool that allows people to access Microsoft Windows computers, which are running this protocol, and take control of those computers and pivot around your environment and take over a bunch of machines. We do not know if the attack that happened in Baltimore, Maryland was a result of this, but in this hypothetical world, Eternal Blue may have been a component. And since we are starting work as a security leader at this hypothetical city, and we've just received threat intelligence that the SMB V1 protocol might place the organization at risk. What can we do in 1 hour that will make a difference for the organization and push forward an idea of how to work on this problem? This is exactly how my job works. And I can tell you that in 2016, I received intelligence about the eternal blue vulnerability, and I wrote a document very similar to the one we're about to write, and that document resulted in my organization collecting and putting forward the resources to turning the SMB V1 protocol off on all of our endpoints and all of our servers in a timely manner. So again, I'm not making comments about Baltimore because this is all hypothetical. I'm just bringing to your attention that you may be working for an organization which 2 years later could be seriously damaged if you're not able to elevate risks and manage and respond to intelligence. Okay, before we get to that, let's make a thing. And my mouse is not working. Work with me here, buddy. I hate trackpads. All right, no mouse.
Oh, there we go.
Well, this is my trackpad. It's all good. Let's make a new Google Doc. We're going to tell our leadership and our IT organization that we're worried about this vulnerability. Let's start with the process that I used to create this kind of a document. And by the way, I call this document an ultralight risk assessment. And I want to draw your attention to the fact that it's ultralight. Who in this room has read a risk assessment? They're hideously ugly. They're long. They're full of garbage. No one will read them. If you hand them to your leadership, nothing will change because they are not concise. They are not meant for human consumption. This is a document that is meant, what?
What do you mean? No, I mean, human beings are writing it.
Yes.
And it tells you.
Absolutely.
And so what does it mean? It's not,
So I will pull up a risk assessment.
sorry.
No, it's totally fine.
Am I walking into this here?
You're not. You're not. Here's the thing about it. A risk assessment is often a spreadsheet. A NIST 800 risk assessment is a spreadsheet which starts with threats and likelihood that those threats will happen and the impact of those threats, sometimes to translation to monetary values, which results in a long spreadsheet broken into 2 columns. One is adversarial threats, one is non-adversarial threats, prioritized by the intersection of the likelihood of the damage and the quantity of the damage. None of that can tell an administrator at a city what to do. What should I do to make it better? Is there a thing I can do here to make it good? None of that will convince a device team in an IT organization to put down what they're doing now. Maybe you have 200 PCs to deliver today with your staff, and to get into the settings that underlie how you build PCs and change the configuration and get rid of that SMB V1 vulnerability. Does that make sense? If I pass a spreadsheet along, it doesn't make results because it isn't really meant for human readability. It's meant for me and my security organization on the back end to track our risks. But I have to translate that into something that is for people, that is about our organization and its future and its safety. Is that make a good case? Rather than me pulling up my actual production risk assessment or risk charter, which I really ought not pull up in public. Although I will say, we do some pretty good work. So to do it live, the first thing I recommend is that we have a header, and that header have a logo of your organization, and have your name, have your date of the creation of the document. That said, I'm not going to start with a blank document. I will start with my actual template. I wanted to start with a blank document, but it's not that big of a deal. So here is a template that I use, and we'll call this well, that's a good point. What should I call this? Call this.
We're in deep trouble.
Well, we didn't know. We didn't actually know.
Can you zoom in?
Yes, I absolutely can zoom in.
I need my eyes checked.
That's great feedback.
Thank you.
More feedback is more better. And I zoomed in too far. See if I can scroll over and still give everybody the best image of this. I realize this isn't super projectable. So this is the header that I throw on things. I used to give out ultralight risk assessments without a header, and the feedback that I got back from my organization was, what, did you write this on the back of a cocktail napkin? Real professional documents come with headers. little trick when you go out into the world. You guys have probably all been in a professional setting, but I've made every mistake. So I'm just going to go through the mistakes that I've made and the evolution of this document and why I think this document is powerful and effective for you to, like I said, galvanize a response within your organization. Let's just call this in. We'll call it an SMB V1 Overview. Show that you understand how important the business is and that the intent of this document is service. This is not for the security engineers and the system administrators. It's for the leaders within your organization. It's for your peers, people outside of security to read. I used to not include an overview. And when I only included my findings and my recommendation, I failed to share with people how important their business was and that I recognized how important their business was. So when I go into a business unit that quite literally keeps our citizens and residents alive, like the fire department, I say the fire department's computing systems are an essential tool used by the department to track efforts which have a life safety component in the operation of the city of Boulder. Does that make sense? When someone from the fire department reads that, they understand that I understand, that they're only here to save lives. I'm making a technology comment. They don't care about technology comments. They need to save lives all day long. Why should they pay attention? First, because I'm building a relationship with them by letting them know that I get their problem. So I am going to do that here. Not perfect, but it doesn't have to be. One thing I always say is that I only offer good enough security. This is a statement about how important our computing systems are. They support the business processes, which support the lifeblood of the community. I get that. So I'm making a recommendation that we mess with them. It better be for a good reason. It's because I already vetted this thing. I looked up Eternal Blue. I figured out that it was really dangerous to our computing systems. A few rounds on this make it cleaner, but I just wanted to give a sense of what's up. Oh, I'm not going to say that. Another thing I've learned over the years, I used to interleave my recommendation with my finding. Not a good move. If you pull the recommendation out, it can be referenced later over and over again. What's the one thing that we're asking to do? Remember, we're here to get the basics right, so 1 or 2 sentences for each section is just fine. could have pre-written this, but I really think there's value in just kind of working through it together, just looking at the process. What is my recommendation? Turn it off. Don't just turn it off now. Change the build process so that it doesn't sneak its way back into our environment. This is exactly what I did in my organization, and immediately the edge cases cropped up. I started to call around as I was making this document to the device team. How plausible is this? To the server team. How plausible is this? Well, we've got a legacy network attached storage unit. Requires SMB V1. Well, we've got an old records management system. And by the way, these are all hypothetical. This is not stuff that I actually dealt with, but I dealt with my own edge cases within my organization. We can't turn SMB V1 off for this department and this department and this department. Why not? There are business requirements. Who can tell me, when it comes down to it, when there's a security problem, who wins? Does the business win or does security win? If you had to make a choice, what do?
Keep operating.
You're only here to run the business. The city exists to do city stuff. It doesn't exist to do cybersecurity stuff. The cybersecurity stuff exists to serve the business of the city only. So if there's a conflict, I don't win. And I have to stand in a place where I'm willing to lose, where I'm committed but not attached to the outcome of the recommendations that I make for an organization.
You can see some of the, I'm sorry.
It's okay, I love it. What's up?
But you can see some of the consequences of not doing this. And you've told the city leaders that here are some consequences of not doing this. And they're going to say, oh, we're doing the business?
Every organization has to decide how much security they're going to do. There is going to be an amount of security that they do, and the security beyond that point they're not going to do. And the security up to that point they are going to do, and they're going to invest in. So it's a very easy question. How many security people should I have in my organization? Should I have 4 or should I have 12? How many people does it take to set up a security operations center? Should we have one of those for 24-hour response? Depending on every question's answer is, it depends. It depends on what the business can afford. It depends on how much risk you're facing. It depends on how bad the situation is. If I know it's very bad, and I put forward a document which is ineffective, and my organization ignores it because my communication is not good enough, I am personally responsible for a cybersecurity failure in my organization. No, that's not really true because I'm doing my best. But I want to get you guys thinking about how important relationships are, communication tools are, to actually getting security done. It seems like knowing all the stuff is what's important. Knowing all the stuff is only the starting point. The tools that you use to share what you know, to make what you're worried about a reality, actually get things changed within your community, within your business. I partner with our leaders, to your question, I partner with our leaders to find mutually agreeable amounts of security to do. I give options, I make recommendations, and I adjust recommendations, and I am flexible in order to create a scenario that works for everyone. If I set this up as, what if I said this is a requirement for the organization? People don't like to be told what to do. I actually get much more engagement with recommendations than I do with requirements. Requirements just kind of piss people off, and I understand that. So I make recommendations, and those recommendations are a little flexible. Maybe this department doesn't get SMB V1 turned off, and we implement compensating controls. We can always implement compensating controls. However, I caution you, that road is long and dusty. When you start to make exemptions to your policies, when you start to allow legacy stuff to live forever, you go into technical debt and you go into security policy debt within your organization. And that debt will ultimately build, and it will end up costing you more often than if you just did the simple thing at the beginning. And that's why I always come back to getting the basics right as the tool that I use. I often feel like we haven't arrived at the right solution yet if it doesn't feel like we're getting the basics right. If it feels like we're setting up something complex, oh, I'd like to still run Windows XP. I'd love it if you wouldn't run XP. Well, it's super important for our business. Okay, I can work with that. What's your plan? Yes.
So if it ever feels too complex for them, or they don't want to take on the whole chunk, Can you break that down into more findings then? So rather than you talk about the current, and then the second finding would be the future, to make it easier, smaller steps for them?
Brilliant. Yes, I wasn't going to do that here. What I was going to do is put an edge case into finding 2. So I was going to pick a rando department like Parks and Rec. Again, this is truly hypothetical. Our Parks and Rec department was like the first department to turn SMB V1 off, so please never, don't extract any of this out and be like, oh, I got, a little bird told me the city of Boulder had it happen this way. I'm hacking it up, but I know how cities work, right? Everyone has a weird department that like hates you or won't do what you want, or to be fair, or where you're just in the middle of building your relationship with them, right? You haven't quite nailed down how to engage them in a way that's really positive or shared the value of what you're working on with them. Or maybe you truly haven't taken the time and energy to understand their business and express to them how you actually get it and you're a support service. So maybe Parks and Rec has a gross NAS To your point, exceptions happen, more detail is needed. Perhaps we need to say, it's okay to do this for 1 year. It might not be okay to do it for longer than 1 year. And when you build a security exemption process within an organization, it's really important to have a field that says, when does this expire? How do we get this back out of our platform? You will blow those expiration dates over and over and over because, again, we're in the real world where it's actually really hard to get a lot of stuff done, especially to get the last mile done. It takes a tremendous amount of effort. So we have a last mile issue here. This storage NAS needs to be around for another year while we wait for that thing to age out and our funds to accrue to replace it within our funding model. We're going to implement port traffic control on the layer 3 switches. Most switches these days are layer 3. Actually, back in 2016, they're not all layer 3, so they might not have been able to provide this kind of compensating control, but you get creative. Maybe you're putting local firewalls on the PCs that you're going to leave this configuration on, or maybe you're going to tune your surveillance tool to pay more attention to SMB V1 traffic, or something like that. Finding 3, there is no finding 3. I need this document to be 1 or 2 pages long. If it's longer than that, I lose the attention of the people who I'm trying to bring into this conversation. So I want to pass along a memo that I feel will be truly read from top to bottom, and if I make it 3 pages long, it will not be truly read from top to bottom. End of story. People don't have time. That's not always true. I can set up a special conversation for something that's truly toxic that requires a lot more conversation, but I actually issue a fair amount of these, and I issue them to a broad range of people, and they often react, and they often do my recommendations because they're infrequent, they're easy to read, they're highly accessible, the recommendations are clear. Looks like you have a question?
Do you usually do bullets and images and that sort of thing, or do you keep it
Almost
full
never.
sentences easy to read?
Yeah, I would do anything that I felt contributed to my ability to communicate effectively to a non-security person. However, I think bullets are ugly. I think hacked up images are a little gnarly. I will almost always include a multimodal communication methodology in educational materials. So if I'm putting out something to the broader organization saying, here is an example of a super toxic phishing email we've been getting. Look, here's what to look for. I don't just say, in quotes, here's what to look for. I take a snapshot of the email and I draw a gross like Microsoft clip art red circle around it and like point an arrow at it. So yeah, totally, right? Like education is, and I have people who help me with my communication style. I'm actually super bad at all of this, and this is all like, I've tried it, it didn't work. I tried it again and I asked a communication person and they were like, oh my God, why did you say that? You're a fool. Fix this, change your style, become better, like get good, scrub. And I think that the purpose of me coming here and showing you this totally simplistic tool is just to show you that a simple tool can have a huge effect if you do it with some care behind it. Yeah.
So I noticed that you didn't put any urgency or priority stuff in there. Is there a reason, a deliberate choice for that?
There's a good reason. I don't issue these unless it's a pre-vetted problem. So I am the Chief Information Security Officer of the organization, and typically people understand they don't get these from me unless there is a significant issue at hand. Does that make sense? Yeah. So if you frivolously put these out, very quickly people will learn that it's not very important. But if you're at work and you started, or you've been working for a few years, and you get a message from the Chief Information Security Officer saying, I have this pre-vetted serious concern about your environment, here is my write-up on this concern, and the write-up is really accessible to you, and it's clear that this person understands your business and has a recommendation that's clearly going to be cost-effective for your organization. I mean, it's not cost-ineffective to turn off a setting. People do react to that. But the way you use the tool determines whether it stays effective or not. So you're right, and I actually explicitly try not to say that the sky is falling. I was at a conference earlier this year, and I literally saw a slide with a toppled Statue of Liberty. Do not communicate that way. It's just too aggressive, and everybody just gets tired of it. And they're like, oh, Ben thinks the sky's falling again. So that doesn't serve. So back to my presentation. This is the point. And I'm going to go back and fix it a little bit because I don't always get these right the first time. The communications that I produce have heart. They're for people. They're to help protect my people from something that I really believe is going to, wreck the boat. So you need to be clear when you begin a communication that is coming from a place of genuine care. And I have a crystal clear example of what genuine care looks like. I eat bagels at Einstein Bagels. I really like their stupid coffee. I like their vanilla hazelnut coffee a lot. So I eat there a lot. I've eaten at a ton of Einstein Bagels around the Denver metro area. And I kept seeing this guy named Mike, who was one of their regional managers. And the thing about Mike that's truly unique is that he remembers everybody's name and their kid's name and what they're into. The dude is a wizard. He's just brilliant in this way. And he always remembers my name. He remembers that me and my son love to hike Sanitas. He's always asking, what are you guys up to? Have you hiked anything cool lately? And so one day, knowing I just don't remember people's names the way that this guy does, and I'm jealous of his capability because you feel so connected to him. So I said, Mike, do you have a trick? Do you have like a little thing you do to you've got like a mental palace? You put everybody's name in a chest? Or like, do you have you use the alphabet? Do you have like some associative memory trick? He's like, yes, Ben. Yeah, buddy. I do have a trick that helps me remember the names of the people who come into my stores. I actually give a shit about each and every customer that I have in this organization. And I was like, oh snap. So that's real, right? Actually caring about people gives you access to way more capabilities than you even thought you had. And that's what I mean about the difference between showing up to get a paycheck and showing up because you actually think that this will matter, because you actually believe that a couple people in your organization will not have depopulated 401ks, that the organization will not lose $400,000 to some stupid scam that's totally preventable, that money will not go down the river because you couldn't take the time and energy to actually care about the people, so you just phoned in the work, hit the checkbox on that baby, went home happy. Hitting the checkbox. There are times in your life when you need to focus on your family, when you need to focus on your hobbies. That's okay. But if you want a career that you actually you're going to look back on and say, holy smokes, I did something amazing. This is awesome. You can have that. But you have to bring this, and then you get to have that journey. It doesn't happen the other way around. You won't just show up, do the least, and then look back and be like, I'm glad I got it in the end. You won't ever get it. It has to be intentional. Again, in that overview section, prove you understand it. Prove you understand the business. Prove you understand the value. Prove you understand why it's a problem to take those systems down and hack them up and put them back and break the NAS and go through the testing process and mess up everybody's Monday or Wednesday or whenever the window is of change time. Prove it. That you put the time in to pre-vet this change and make sure that it was something that your organization really needed. Include a header. Be professional. You are a professional. I am barely professional in this presentation because I've got a lot of caffeine flowing through my veins. And I'm also not a professional presenter. I'm just an excited guy who has a fun idea that I really like sharing with people. So try to put your best foot forward when you put these documents together. Try to make things clean. Select nice fonts. If you don't know how to make things nice, find a friend who knows how to make things nice and ask them to look at your materials. Almost nothing that we produce by ourselves is worth anything. It's usually really rough. You need a second opinion. Do not deliver papers that have not been proofread. This is basic stuff. Yes?
Wait, did you say don't submit papers that have not been proofread?
That's what I said. Solid advice.
Did you say not to submit papers that have not been proofread?
How many papers that have not been proofread have you submitted? 0 papers, right?
Thank you.
Yes. Professionals. The recommendations section, make sure that it's about the basics. You are almost certainly not in an organization where you can afford to get beyond the basics. Almost no one is in an organization where they can afford to get beyond the basics. How many of you have the basics right in your personal network? Your home network, your personal devices? How many of you got the basics locked down? I don't, and I'm a chief information security officer. My home is leaking IoT information all over the planet. It's a problem. Deliver good enough security. Listen, cost effectiveness is a serious thing. Organizations don't have unlimited attention and resources to put into these matters. And it's your job often, even as a low or mid-level person within an organization, you have a lot of responsibility to figure out whether this is worth your time or not. And we struggle a lot to think about that. An issue that we're struggling with right now is what's going to happen with tariffs? Do we need to pre-buy a bunch of computers because they're about to get way more expensive? I don't know. And no one knows. And if we screw it up, we'll spend a ton of money for no reason. And if we don't do it, we might spend a ton of money for no reason. And we're doing our best to guess what the future will be like and make the right choices. If you put the care in, it's okay. But, doing a good enough job, and then don't feel bad. You did your best. Good enough is okay. One thing that my mom always told me was that she was always very concerned about being an excellent parent, and that she only really came into her own as a mom when she came to terms with the fact that she only had the sauce to be a good enough parent. And that's something that I've taken into my parenting as well. I think it's really important to understand that being good enough is good enough. By definition, it's okay. So if you're seeking to be excellent, seeking to be the best in the world, that is extremely damaging under a lot of circumstances. It can be damaging to your organization. If I push us into some space where we're doing way too much work to plan for these tariffs and the tariffs don't materialize, that was an inappropriate use of my ability to control my organization's attention. Eliminate things that are designed to make you sound smart. This is something that is about me because I do enjoy building a reputation in my organization. It detracts from the quality of my work. And so I wanted to put it in case that speaks to you as well. Sounding smart is not as important as delivering results for the people that we are protecting. So be careful that you're not just trying to sound smarter than other people. And the last one speaks very clearly to my organization's values. When you have a job, you need to learn your organization's values and you need to understand how the mission and values pertain to the security work that you're doing. My organization does not value military terminology. It is extremely exclusive, and military terminology in general excludes significantly large groups of people from cybersecurity as an industry. Gender terminology, when I write, especially if I get it wrong, gender terminology is a journey, and I get it wrong all the time. And I work with people all the time to address them the way they want to be addressed, to have a communication style with them that is evolving, but that is based on treating them with respect and dignity. And our documents can easily fail to reflect that if you don't put any time or energy into it. It's well worth thinking about. And explode your acronyms. So given that, I wanted to think in terms of these things and go back through this document and see if we could fix it a little bit and make it better. So we have a header. We've got SMB V1. No one knows what that is, and no one cares what that is. It's a dangerous configuration. It's good enough. Everybody gets it. It's a dangerous one. I don't see any military stuff or acronyms here. We have a bad setting. I would, tune this up a little bit. One thing I wanted to mention, if you fold it back to acronyms, people don't appreciate that. So I would just say, even though it makes the document look longer, I tend to use formal names and terminology from my organization. Oops, I managed to do something weird. Awesome. We're just going to leave it bold. I would change all these SMB V1s and get them out of here. Intelligence reports. Does anyone know the difference between information and intelligence? This is something that should be deeply pondered. Information is all the crap that comes in. Intelligence is the stuff that you've made sure was important. I don't use the word intelligence outside of my own office within my organization, because even though I am running an intelligence organization within my business, whose job is to essentially manipulate the organization for its own benefit, manipulate it to protect people to the best of my ability, that is not people-positive terminology. We don't manipulate people, we don't turn them, we don't corrupt them in any way. And we're not, right? We're actually strengthening people. We're making the organization better. So abandoning military terminology, what would I say? We can just say reports from our external partners. Layer 3 switches. Who here knows what a layer 3 switch is? Got one? You guys might even all know what a layer 3 switch is, but it's just not an appropriate type of thing to put in this document. So I often do 2 or 3 or 4 passes on a document like this. I write it. First I call somebody, try to figure out if what I'm hearing is true. I get worried and I write something. I call somebody up and do a little bit of a feasibility analysis. I call somebody else up and say, how open are we to this? I call somebody else up and say, I've got a document that I'm going to share with the organization, and I would love to get your perspective on the quality of this document, whether it's really saying what I mean. I call somebody else up and say, do you think there'll be a project management resource that we could use to bring this into reality if I make this request and it gets accepted? I call somebody else up and I try to get this into an agenda in an IT steering committee or in a leadership meeting of some kind. Yeah.
So I'm looking at this from the perspective of someone who is working in who's receiving this email. I see the recommendation, and my question is, what do I do about this? Because I'm not doing the configuration stuff myself. And how do you justify that they should actually look at this document and respond to it rather than just ignore it because it doesn't actually have anything that they can actually do on their end?
So that is highly situational to the nature of the ask.
Okay.
So let's say, I'm trying to come up with a good hypothetical example. Let's say you run, and again, this is completely and truly hypothetical. I've looked for things like this and I have not found these. Let's say you are working in an intervention program that protects children from abusers, that collects information about children into technology-based tools and uses that information to help law enforcement and social workers and other things like that protect the children within your community. And you receive one of these and it says, I need you to do a data inventory and figure out where this kind of information is. You are being tasked with that job. I am asking you to do it, and I am in fact asking you to stop doing your day-to-day job to do what I'm asking you to do. And I want you to read this, and I want you to get that I understand your business, but I still think it's worth doing. And I want you to say, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do this. And then my ask will be like, return that, or here's how we'll feed it into a project, or here's how we'll put more control in place around that data. Maybe we'll encrypt those tables in a database. Whatever it is I'm asking, it often has something from someone who has nothing to do with IT or nothing to do with cybersecurity, where I'm asking them to do some work for me. The only reason I use this is because it is within the realm of possibility that a city or a county who is devastated by a cryptoware attack can prevent that kind of damage by having the tools in place to escalate risks and having the organization respond to those escalations, getting some changes made into their environment. Again, I'm not saying this would have actually fixed the problem, but this is the exact tool that I use, a more immature version of this tool, a more immature version of this conversation is how I convinced my organization to put in the time and effort to turn those protocols off in 2016 or whenever that Eternal Blue intelligence came out. So I'm running out of time. I wanted to point out too that making materials as a security person is actually pretty fun. You get to invent your own materials. I invented the Ultralight risk assessment. It is not on SANS's website. You may or may not have access to these tools as a part of your education. It doesn't matter. When you come into an organization, they usually don't know what they need from you, and you get to invent it, and it's super fun. So you get to help people and be creative. And having a creative process as a part of your work, I think is really cool. So that's my point, and the point of this conversation is that I do think that cybersecurity is a calling, and I have a call to put out, which is if you have these skills, to please use them to protect people. It's very exciting to make lots of money, and you will make lots of money, because this profession, especially outside of government, is very lucrative. It's not super lucrative within government, but that's okay, because I also get to do what I want with my life, to actually help people. Cities and counties need people who will take a pay cut to protect the actual human beings within their constituency. The federal government needs people who will put up with a lot of politics to make a difference in these spaces. The cybersecurity industry as a whole, the products that come out, need security to be baked in. The technology industry as a whole needs people who care enough to make sure that the next BMW that comes out can't be hacked and turned off on the middle of the highway. That's super duper important, and it only ever happens if somebody represents cybersecurity as something that's about people, keeping people safe. Because if it's only about money, it's never cost effective. It's always cost effective to do the cheapest thing that gets your product to market the fastest. That's always the best deal for you and for the business. But you're counter to that. You're a cost center. You're asking the organization to slow down, spend money, and pay attention. And what is underlying that ask is a commitment to human beings, to delivering security that actually makes a difference for people, especially now that cybersecurity impacts medical equipment, transportation infrastructure, finance, food, water quality, everything. So that's the conclusion of the work that I wanted to put forward today. And I think we totally have time for questions. I don't know about that. You can time keep me, but it is not yet 5 o'clock. So what else do you guys want to talk about?
Questions,
I'm at your
comments,
disposal.
assertions? Let's thank our speaker first. And then I assume that there are at least 3 people in the audience who have questions. And so, questions, comments, assertions?
Yes, sir.
Can you describe the security implementation of the 5G rollout pilot program that Boulder is going through?
No. I apologize. I do not know much about the 5G pilot program. My understanding, and this may be wrong, is that it is a public-private partnership, and my office and the infrastructure that the city of Boulder manages, which is our underground fiber, our in-building, our public wireless network,
organization, I'm not able to find it on net.
which is under the control of the IT department and under the control of my security program, is very much separate from the kinds of building codes and city council related matters that will ultimately impact how private industry gets their radio infrastructure into this space. So I apologize, but I just don't know anything about that. I feel like that is probably a political issue as well, and I mean, I don't really, I have never been in front of any information about, you know, how that's being done. So I apologize, but I don't have a ton of information on that. Hot topics fail. What else you guys got?
So when this, was it Blue Enterprise or Enterprise Blue or what was it?
Eternal Blue, the vulnerability, yeah.
Eternal Blue came out, were there people actually who were operational, did they sort of escalate this up, or were you the person who was sort of scanning the horizon? I mean, where do you get sources of information or sources of, hey, we should be worried about this? And then you mentioned legacy systems. And I'm sorry, they're everywhere, and it costs thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to do anything with them. I mean,
Yeah. So first and foremost, our industry has a way to publish vulnerabilities called the CVE system, which you're probably familiar with. The CVE system is run by the MITRE Corporation on behalf of the United States government and many, many, many interested parties. And it aggregates the known vulnerabilities in the technology ecosystem for you to go search. A CVE was issued about the SMB V1 protocol, and I don't know the date, and you are welcome to look that up. And when that was issued, there was a lot of news about it. I can neither confirm nor deny that there was some early information about that going out to parties who needed to know within national security space or government space. I don't actually remember, so when I say I can neither confirm nor deny, I truly don't. It is rare that we get early information about things, but sometimes we do. There are infrastructures in place that you can sign up for within vertical industries to help you get access to threat intelligence. Those are called ISACs. The water industry has an ISAC, the financial industry has an ISAC, the healthcare industry has an ISAC. If you join an organization, figure out what industry you're in, and the first question you should ask is, are we a member of the ISAC? And if you're not a member of the ISAC, keep your resume together. Because it's extremely important to be tied in to the intelligence and the knowledge that's coming through. What is other organizations seeing in this space? Oftentimes that information is too deeply vetted and you don't find out until it's too late. So also reach out to your peers. One thing that's super duper cool about cybersecurity is that CISOs tend not to compete. So you'll see in the Denver metro area 2 CISOs of identity management corporations, 2 CISOs of SIM or SOC service providers having dinner. They're not giving trade secrets to each other, but they understand that protection protects everyone. When their customers of the competitor succeed, the whole ecosystem gets better. Why? Because cyber attackers are an industry that is funded by successful attacks. If you prevent attacks, you defund the attackers. You make them spend more to get you the next time. And when you do that, you make the world better. You make the whole ecosystem stronger. So we share a lot of information. And there is quite a bit of friend DA, as we like to say, conversations, where critical information is shared just in time for you to adjust your configuration or warn your users. And if you are in a position to join that kind of ecosystem, I strongly suggest that you do. For people who are not in the workplace yet or who are just getting started, Colorado Equal Security is an excellent example of a community of practitioners of cybersecurity. They have a Slack channel that's free to join and an ongoing, eternal conversation about what's coming up, what is at risk, what's going on in our industry, that kind of thing.
Colorado Equal Security?
Yep, Colorado Equal Security. What else? Yes, sir.
Maybe you've covered, I had to come a little late. Ransomware in cities are kind of been a big issue. How do you see that? Luckily, we don't hear Boulder in the news with that, which is great, but what is it just because they're a bigger target that they're struggling with it, or is it something associated with government that is, you know, just they've got good security in place and it's just the nature of people that they're going to fall to some good phishing, or what's going on in your view?
I think there is a series of trends at play. And I think that the trend currently is for local governments to be targeted by attackers for many reasons. One of the reasons that I don't have any proof of, but I will share anyway, is that local governments have risk management apparatus in place. So many of them have cybersecurity insurance. And in the absence of an effective security program, an organization with cybersecurity insurance is just a paycheck for bad guys. And I want to be really clear about cyber cryptoware here. There's a whole industry that's designed to help you pay so that you can just get your stuff back. And you should keep in mind that the stuff that you get back has been ruined. It's been encrypted by the bad guys and then decrypted by the bad guys. It's been in their possession according to the law. So you should keep that in mind. In addition, it is our responsibility not just to look at the security posture of the organization, but to look at the disaster planning posture of our organizations and confirm that our backup plans are effective and that our backup systems are inaccessible to attackers. So that significantly helps prevent that kind of attack from happening and from being successful. And I want to point out that here's a good example. This gentleman probably knows what's up. Your computer gets infected. Do you just decrypt it and keep rolling? No, you rebuild it. You have to rebuild it either way. You cannot decrypt the computers and just go back to business. You have to burn the ecosystem down and rebuild it either way. So you might as well not pay. You might as well, hopefully, put it back from your backups. If you can't put it back from your backups, you're probably going to have to pay. And that's the reality. So organizations right now understand that. The federal government has put out crystal clear recommendations around the quality of your backups, that those backups need to not be accessible from your regular network, and the quality of your endpoint security, and the quality of your phishing training, and all the things that you try to put in place. But you know, there's many dangers out there. Having the backstop of outstanding backup security is an extremely effective force in preventing these things. And unfortunately, a few cities had to share that. They had to go first. And it was effective enough and in the news enough that it is trendy right now for the bad guys to attack cities. But the news is also a little bit BS. So you saw maybe the 21 Texas municipalities were attacked. The news kind of made it sound like those municipalities were attacked specifically. But what actually happened was that a managed service provider in use by all 21 of those cities was impacted. And they were able to just jump into those 21 cities through the managed service provider. And the way the news spun it was like, oh, bro, they planned a coordinated 21 city attack. No, they just got lucky and they nailed the service provider and they used everything that they could get out of that service provider. Does that make sense? And so the news doesn't really give you an accurate picture of how municipalities are being targeted anyway. And in 6 months, municipalities might be even more of a target, or they might have moved on to healthcare or whatever else. And it might even be that all of those places are being attacked, kind of however much they're being attacked, but the news media is focusing on municipalities right now, or focusing on healthcare right now. And that's another thing that I have to take into account when I escalate what kind of danger are we in lately. Is it true, or is it just what's being reported? I actually haven't looked into that at this point in time, so I can't say for sure, but you can't believe everything you read. That's the difference between intelligence and information. Yeah. I feel like there should be at least one more question based on your assertion at the
Well, there
beginning.
were 3 people in the room. One has spoken. That means that there are 2 others who wants to be in jeopardy and be totally embarrassed, humiliated, ostracized from the community, or...
We never embarrass or shame.
My understanding was that you only wanted one of us to ask the question.
Okay.
Ask it. Let's do it.
I think it's already been asked.
It has already been asked.
Been asked about 5G.
Asked about
So
5G.
we know nothing. So why don't you think that Boulder will be a target? It sounds to me like...
Boulder's always a target. Everyone's a target. A target of ransomware, of cryptoware?
Crypto, ransom, all of your IoT devices. I mean, why not just burn the whole thing down?
Well, the Boulder has a mission. Boulder delivers critical infrastructure. Boulder serves and supports a huge amount of technology research. Boulder has communities. Many of them are vulnerable communities, which are deeply impacted by cybersecurity risks. And every single business unit in Boulder is working on innovative capabilities, which means they're taking technology and they're bringing it into their business model. So the proliferation of Internet of Things devices within the city of Boulder is happening on a massive scale. And all of our buildings are being retrofitted with more intelligent, more energy efficient, more connected infrastructure. And so I believe you mischaracterized my position by saying that I don't think that Boulder is a target. Boulder is an ever-present target. I would be seriously remiss if I believed that Boulder was not a target. And in fact, we have phishing emails arriving every day. We have Garbo trying to get installed on people's PCs. We got crap flying through my network analysis tools. We got alerts popping up. We got PCs we got to wipe. We got people's accounts we got to help protect all day long. That's the reality of running a real organization. You interface with the world probes at you to try to find your weaknesses. And we're always trying to figure out what weaknesses are being generally exploited, hardening those up. We're always scanning ourselves. We're always keeping the door open on our engagement with our employees so that they can come and help us recover or we can help them recover. So we know that we're a target. And truthfully, much of what happens and transpires at cities and counties is a there but for the grace of God go I type scenario. Some cities get hit and some cities do not get hit. And there is no moral component to that. Baltimore did not have the impact that it had because they did a bad job. We don't know what kind of a job they did. And we are not in a position to judge them. And in fact, their bravery in the face of not paying ransom because they knew they would have to burn the ecosystem down, or maybe just because they couldn't even coordinate the effort to pay the ransom, did not provide millions of dollars of funding to the bad guys. And I have tremendous respect for that. Even if it was accidental, I have tremendous respect for it. An unwillingness to pay to get back out of a bad situation. So I will never speak of the victims of cyber attacks as if they deserved it. That's unacceptable in my mind, because there is no component of the quality of the people involved, in my opinion.
Do you see the city or maybe the Small Business Administration or some government entity as a way to get the message out on how to be safe, how to protect yourself, how to find resources, how to not be ashamed, as you put it, when asking for help?
I certainly have given up on the federal government as a resource. So there have been times in this country where disease was proliferating and campaigns against spitting in public were effectively presented to people. There was a point in time where cities didn't know about crosswalks and people were getting crushed in intersections by speeding vehicles until someone sat down and came up with a program for how to keep people alive as they travel through intersections. It is the responsibility of our government, pretty much our federal government, but I'll take the responsibility if they abdicate it, to create programs that deliver the education necessary for our residents to live safe, successful, modern lives. That's absolutely their responsibility. And I have waited for them to deliver on that responsibility and waited and waited and waited. The federal government, the Department of Defense has FEMA, and FEMA's role is life safety in the event of a critical incident or disaster. FEMA has not intervened in the cybersecurity space, but they just created a new agency, CISA, which is specifically designed to cover the last mile for cybersecurity defense of critical infrastructure and of some other areas that pertain to Homeland Security. CISA is an effective partner, and they deliver a lot of good things, but they deliver those things to the people who run critical infrastructure. They have not yet delivered anything to people, to our residents. And I expect them to do better. And I will do what I can to produce materials that are effective, and I do. In fact, I'm in continuous collaboration with other cities and counties to try to get materials out there. There are lots and lots of other groups outside of the feds who do produce materials. But as we can see, those materials have not been effective at educating or delivering digital citizenship skills to the residents of the United States. And interestingly enough, we are making a lot of progress with children. So you'll see that high schools all have digital citizenship programs, and those programs are pretty cool. BVSD has an outstanding digital citizenship program. It's too late. We can't wait for those folks to grow up so that we can live in a nice place. That's not acceptable, right? We need to deliver these skills very rapidly using proven apparatus. We know what to do if, cars are hitting people in intersections. You paint the stripes on the road. That came from the top. Our government knows how to deliver those programs. They know how to deliver that knowledge, but they have not yet used their position to do so. And I sincerely hope that future iterations of our government take that responsibility on. I really do. And if they do not, then I will continue to do what I can for Boulder Valley. And I think I could go on and on about what I have tried to do. It is a little harder than it sounds to get the word out on these skills. It's a little harder than making a press release.
As a follow-up question to that, you mentioned before in your talk that even you as a professional IT person have difficulty getting the basics down on your own personal computers. So how does that really translate to having actual good education when even we have difficulty with that on our own?
Maybe that's part of why the materials are so hard to make, right? Getting the basics right, as I get older, as I get wiser, ain't nearly as simple as it sounds. And so I set it as a target because it feels like it's going to be cost effective, like it's going to be the right spot to hit, like it's going to be a sweet balance. But real life is messy. It's so messy. And there are communities in this country that still don't get crosswalks right. In fact, you might argue that there are many communities who have not reacted to changing requirements with crosswalks or with bike intersections or with all of the things that a changing world requires of communities to grow and to stay ahead of and to be fast and to be willing to spend money on and to be willing to pay attention to and to lean in to protect the least important people, the people whose vote counts the least, who have the least money, who have the least ability to insure themselves, who have the least ability to recover with grace. Those are the people who are the most impacted by the damage of not fixing these problems. And so they get left off the end of the list. And we just fix critical infrastructure, which is all privately owned, which is a huge financial win for the private industries who own that critical infrastructure because they don't have to pay for the fix of their infrastructure. So I challenge everybody to take a little of your own time and figure out what getting the basics right means in your own space. It is the standard in my mind, but it's not as easy as, I have found devices that were not in my headspace in my home that are networked. And I've been like, whoa, I didn't actually configure this. I didn't change the admin password on this thing. I am good at this, and I still screwed it up. So I wish that I could tell you that I've got it all locked down, but who has it all locked down,
On that note, anybody remember the title of this seminar series?
Technology, cybersecurity, and policy.
Technology, cybersecurity, and policy. Fundamental ideas, cities, cars, people first. Let's thank our speaker. This was amazing.
Thank you guys very much for your time, and I hope that it was worth it.
And then on behalf of the PCP, a swag bag.
Swag bag, love it, thank you. That's cool. I will not forget to leave your material.
There's no relation.
Just keep going to the seminar.
So thank you